What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 favorite $300 old flagship phones that you should buy in this mid 2023. Wanted to go ahead and update this list a little bit and give you guys some price updates. Alright, so we're going to kick it off with the Galaxy S21 Ultra. Alright, so this phone came down in price just a little bit, not a lot. Last time we looked at it, it was like $420. Now it's come down to around $370. So it is slowly coming down. You can kind of find them for like $350 if you really shop around. But that's typically what this is going to be priced at. And you also have on this phone a aluminum frame glass bag. It's one of my favorite phones to recommend this year, actually. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and a lot of people forget that this phone actually does have pen support. It just doesn't have the stylus built in like the Note phones, but it is actually there. Now this phone does have a 6.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus at 1500 nits peak brightness, 1440p 515 for the PPI. Very beautiful display, and I actually preferred this display over like the S23 Ultra's display simply because it's just a little bit easier to hold since it's not as boxy. So if you have smaller hands, you can actually sort of handle this phone, and it's a little bit more comfortable than the wider phones. So this phone also has Android 13, One UI 5.1. It will get updates for a few more years, which is really good. You have the Snapdragon AAA processor on here, and the chip on here is very fast. Pretty much you can play any game you throw at it. It does really good with multitasking. It's still an extremely fast phone. It does get a little bit warm when you're doing very intensive stuff, but most people, typically won't notice because they'll put a case on it. But just do note that. So this phone does have 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM. They do have a lot of 256 versions, around that you can get for pretty cheap as well too. So this phone has pretty much all the flagship features that you would want. Really good sounding stereo speakers on here. Also under the display fingerprint sensor, very fast. Samsung desktop support, like I said, stylus support is on here. It basically has everything that the S23 Ultra has. As far as feature wise, so that's really awesome. Now the reason why I really love recommending this phone is because it has a really good camera still. So it's got a 108 megapixel standard, a 10 megapixel periscope telephoto with 10x optical zoom, and then a 10 megapixel telephoto with 3 times optical zoom, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 8K24 with a 40 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. It still has really good specs even compared to the newest flagship, the S23 Ultra. Still very high res photos, good dynamic range, really good zoom photography on here. 10 times zoom looks really good. 30 times zoom even looks really good on this phone. And of course you can do the the crazy 100 times zoom, take pictures of the moon. So it still has a very up-to-date camera. Like I said, I did a comparison to the S23 Ultra. Check that out. You will find that the image quality is not that far off like you would think it would be. So the battery life on here is pretty decent. Like I said, I think Samsung did a really good job with the S23 Ultra upgrading the battery. The battery life on here isn't bad. You can pretty much get a day out of it, about 6 hours of screen on time. 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging is on board. Like I said, one of my favorite phones to recommend. As the year goes on, I can easily see this coming down to around the $350 price point. All right, next is going to be the iPhone 12. I really like this phone, especially for anybody who really likes the Apple ecosystem. This is an awesome phone. You can find them for around $350, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this phone in the iPhone 11 now, since Apple actually killed off the iPhone 10 and the 8 Plus. Those phones won't be getting iOS 17. So this is a good phone that I recommend you guys check out if you really like iPhones. So this one has the aluminum frame. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. It's a little bit more boxy than the iPhone, the 11 and 10s and stuff like that. So this phone has a pretty good display, especially compared to the iPhone 11. Because that one has an LCD. This one has the OLED display, a Super Retina XDR display, 1200 nits peak brightness at 6.1 inches, 1080p plus 460 for the PPI. It's a very good looking panel here, and like I said, the overall design, it looks pretty similar to the iPhone 14 that we have now. So basically the cameras are basically switched. So this phone, iOS 17, it will get updates for a very long time. It's running the Apple A14 chip. It's a super fast phone. It just flies through applications. I did a little speed test with this in the 14 Pro Max. Basically, it was on par with the 14 Pro Max. And as far as opening applications, playing games, pretty much felt the same on it. It's a very nice phone to have for, you know, cheap gaming experience. Now the base model on here is 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. You also have on here some pretty good sounding stereo speakers, great bass quality. This phone has all the same features pretty much, Face ID, also your NFC, all that good stuff is going to be on here, and you even have the MagSafe wireless charging as well on here. This phone does a really good job with the cameras. Like I said, I couldn't really tell a big difference from the 12, 13 and 14 as far as camera quality wise, especially when you're in good lighting, but even in just lower light, this phone still performs really good. So like I said, that's why I recommend just spending less money and getting this phone. Honestly, I would never get the 13 or 14 over this phone. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60 and a 12 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. Really good image quality coming out of this phone. Basically still flagship level quality photos. Really good ultra wide on here. Really good selfies on here as well too. And video, like I said, is really good on these iPhones. So really no complaints at all with the image quality on here. Like I said, very close to the newer phones. You also have on here pretty good battery life as well. It's a 2,815 milliamp hour battery. Like I said, you do have the wireless and MagSafe charging on here. Screen on time is pretty good on here. Like I said, I got mine's used, and this one has 86% battery health, and I'm easily able to get through a day, no problem on this phone. So battery life is pretty good on the 12. So I would definitely consider the iPhone 12. All right, so the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. A lot of people have been asking me about this phone, and I don't think this is coming down in price, at least until the next, you know, the S24 Ultra comes out. Simply because this phone's in a unique position because it's still getting security patches, and it's the last Note phone that's still getting security patches with SD card support. So that's a big deal, actually. It's a bigger deal than a lot of people think. So this phone has the stainless steel frame on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. You have the built-in stylus, so anybody who's into digital artwork or you just want to navigate with the stylus, this is an awesome phone for that. Massive 6.9 inch display on here. It's 1440p 496 for the PPI, 120 Hz HDR10 plus. Not a big difference from this display and the newest S23 Ultra. The biggest difference is this only runs 120 Hz at 1080p and not 1440p. Other than that, it's still an excellent looking display. You know, still looks really good. This phone got its last majorOS update with Android 13, One UI 5, and it's currently getting the security patches. Snapdragon 865 Plus chip is on this model, and it is a beast still at gaming and basically doing whatever on this phone. It is really good. It's able to play PUBG at 90 frames. It just flies through the OS really well. So it's still a very fast phone. Nothing about this phone feels dated as far as speed wise. And again, that's for the Snapdragon version. I'm not sure about the Exynos version. Like I said, micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 12 gigs of RAM. You still pretty much have all of your same flagship features on this phone. Really good sounding stereo speakers with great bass quality. NFC is on here. Under the display fingerprint sensor, it's very fast. Samsung desktop support. Reverse wireless charging, it basically has everything you could want, you know, in a flagship phone. So the interesting thing about the Note 20 Ultra is it still has a pretty good camera setup. I would say the zoom quality is not as advanced as like the S22 and S23. It doesn't have the 100 times zoom. It can go up to 50 times zoom, but it can still do the moon shots and stuff like that. And like I said, those phones do a better job in low light. This phone, it does a somewhat decent job, but in daytime photos, almost identical. Check out my comparison I did. It's a very close. So it's at a 108 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel periscope telephoto, that's 5x optical zoom, 12 megapixel ultra wide. It can shoot an 8K 24, 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. It's still gonna take some really good, shots, especially in good lighting. You can almost, you almost can't tell the difference, right, between the newer phones and good lighting. But yeah, the video is pretty solid on here. But like I said, as far as the camera situation for the average person, I think this is a really, really good phone for taking pictures still, just as a point and click. If you're just a casual camera photo taker. The battery situation on here is a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, wired charging on here at 25 watt. Basically, I can still get pretty good battery life out of my Note 20 Ultra. I can squeeze around 6 hours of screen on time out of this one. And yeah, so nothing feels dated about this phone. So I definitely check this out, for 300 bucks. It's a really, really good option. All right, so the next phone is the Galaxy S22. So I really like this phone, guys. I think the only thing that holds this phone back a little bit is the battery situation. It kind of reminds me of the S10e. Where you only get it around, like, with this one, it's like 5 hours of screen on time, it feels like. So not quite a full day, but if you get like a battery pack with this phone, it's just a steal. So this phone is easily, you can find it for 300 bucks. And I love the design of this phone. Glass back, aluminum frame on here. It's IP68, dust and water resistant. Just a really nice phone to look at and hold. I really like the camera design on here as well. 6.1 inch dynamic AMOLED display, 1300 nits peak brightness, 1080p 425 for the PPI. Very slim bezels. Like I said, just a very pretty phone to look at. It has the Android 13 One UI 5.1 on here, and it's a very fast phone with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip as well. Like I said, this phone can get a little bit warm, but like I said, most people won't notice because they'll have a case on it. But I've never had any actual major performance problems with this phone. It just flies through anything you throw at it. Opening apps, gaming, PUBG, whatever you do on it, it's a very, very fast phone. 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM is on board. And like I said, performance-wise, it is absolutely awesome. Has a lot of the same flagship features. Very fast under the display fingerprint sensor, Samsung desktop support, reverse wireless charging is on here. And it's just an awesome experience. I think the cameras are pretty good on this phone as well too. It's got a 50 megapixel standard, a 10 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It can shoot in 8K 24 and a 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. Absolutely awesome cameras. Basically, it's pretty much identical to the S23. I actually did a side-by-side comparison with the photos. A lot of people even prefer the S22. So if you want a camera for $300 that's going to give you basically the top flagship quality stills, definitely check this phone out. It's a really, really good buy. Also, you have really good sounding stereo speakers on this phone as well too. Really good bass quality. This phone also has, like I said, not the biggest battery, 3700 milliamp hour battery, and wireless, reverse wireless, 25 watt charging. Basically, like I said, around 5 hours of screen on time, what it feels like I'm getting on this phone. So not quite a day, but if you can get over that, this is a really good buy. Great cameras, great display, and it's super fast, and it's going to get updates for a pretty long time too. The next phone is the LG V60, and even though LG's out of the smartphone market, I still really like this phone. I always use it. Even if you use it as a secondary device, because it's extremely cheap at around like $167. I see it online. But also, since it's that cheap, you can actually buy the dual screen case as well. It costs around 60 bucks, I think. And it's just a really good deal. I really like this phone because it offers a very unique experience that you can't really get with other phones. So we got the aluminum frame on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. This phone, like I said, has a dual screen case capability, so you can basically turn it into two phones. And it's just a very well built phone. Glass back, aluminum frame. You also have stylus support on the LG V60 as well. A lot of people don't know that. It has the POLED display at 6.8 inches. It's 1080p 395 for the PPI. Really nice looking display. I think the only thing about this display is that it doesn't have high refresh rate, even though it's a very smooth 60 hertz panel though. This phone got the Android 13 update, which was really nice. So that was quite a surprise. I did a video on that. Snapdragon 865 chip on here. This phone does have micro SD card support on here, and the unique thing about it has the built-in headphone jack with a quad DAC. So that's why I said it's a very unique experience. So you got dual screen case, quad DAC, and SD card support. That's why I said it still makes for a really good flagship to have in 2023 because of that unique experience. And honestly, what I do is just throw some antivirus software on here just to make sure, since it probably won't get any more security updates, so just to monitor the phone security wise. And yeah, so I still really like this phone. It does have also 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. It's a very fast phone with the Snapdragon 865 chip. Still pretty much flies through everything as far as gaming, with PUBG, and as far as just bouncing in and out of applications, multitasking. It does a really good job. Very smooth phone, and also some very good sounding speakers. Really good bass quality on here as well too. You also have an under the display fingerprint sensor on here, which is pretty good as well. Again, not the fastest, not as fast as Samsung's ultrasonic, but it's pretty decent. This phone also has respectable cameras on here: 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, 0.3 depth sensor. It can shoot in 8K 30 with a 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 30. I think from the shots, as you can see here, it still takes really good shots, especially in good lighting. Plenty of detail, really good ultra wide, pretty good depth of field on here as well too. So I really like the cameras on here and the color on this phone. It also gives very good natural colors, which is something that I really like. You don't have to kind of edit colors if you like, the more natural look as opposed to Samsung's more saturated look. As far as the battery situation, this has excellent battery life and also really good standby time as well too. 5,000 milliamp battery, wireless charging is on board. This phone easily lasts a day and a half, easy. So this is a phone that I absolutely love. Like I said, offers an extremely unique, a unique situation here with the dual screen case, SD card support, and also you have the headphone jack for the quad DAC. So that's pretty much it, guys. Be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.